Oh, Bob. Okay, let's make the map. We have dependencies. We have the four things that Bob is concerned with. In order, we have health, fitness. So we have health, let's call it health. Speaking or charisma, we'll go charisma. Money, we can just do the dollar bill sign. And then we have his interesting stuff. So we'll call it interesting. Okay, we have his four things, a pretty simple map here because there's only four. Our question is, what thing is dependent on what thing? So, is health and fitness, whatever, dependent on money? Well, he needs to be able to pay for all that, so yes, that would be dependent on that. Is his interesting stuff, his hobbies, dependent on money? Not necessarily, but we'll say for the sake of argument, for Bob, the stuff he does costs money, so yep, it's dependent on money. Is his charisma, his speaking ability, dependent on money? Well, he needs to pay for his phone to talk to his friends or Alice, because Bob and Alice, Alice is the chatbot, not Alice, an actual person, yeah, he needs to have money to be able to talk to chatbots. So we have that. Everything needs money. Now, does money need anything else? Does his job require some level of health and fitness? Well, if he gets too odious, he may lose his job because they might just not want him around. Sure, why not? As far as charisma, speaking ability, if he becomes too unpleasant to talk to, then you know what? He might also lose his job. Let's say that he does a job where that is required. In terms of interesting stuff, does he need hobbies to do his job? Let's say no. Okay, health. Does doing his interesting stuff require health and or fitness? Let's say, for the sake of argument, he doesn't necessarily do a sporting activity, so it might not necessarily be needed, but maybe he has some, so this could be a partial dependency. Depends on what the activity is. Looking at charisma, does either of these need each other? Does he need to have fun, interesting speaking ability? Does he need to know how to have the gift of the gab in order to be health and fit? Not really. In order to have the gift of the gab, does he have to be healthy or have that? Not really directly, no. That wouldn't be required. Interesting stuff, charisma. Can his hobby be a solo hobby? Yes, it could be. Doesn't really require that there. This looks good to me. Okay, now let's see what the times are between each thing. So, after how long from him losing his job does he no longer have access to gym membership, shower, etc.? Let's say Bob has 2 months of savings left up. So after 2 months, he starts having real money problems. So this direction is 2 months. Okay, health to this. After how stinky does he have to be to lose his job is the magical question. Well, let's, who knows? Who knows what this would be? Let's say that Bob just gets intolerably vile after, oh, people have a high tolerance. Let's do a month. Let's do a month. People put up with a lot of stuff. Let's do a month. Why not? Okay, maybe he's showering in the sink at work or something and finally gets caught after a month. Who knows? Okay, so we have money goes to interesting. How long does he have to not have money for until he can't really do the hobby? Well, let's say that once he loses his job, his money goes towards this, but he cuts the hobby immediately. His savings doesn't go there. That could be like a day. So this could be a day. So we have 1 day. Money to charisma. How long until he shuts off his phone? Well, that's probably going to be similar to this because he'll probably have his reserve attached to that. So I'll also probably put this at about a 2-month situation because of reserve. And then charisma to money. How long does he have to not talk to his favorite chatbot before he just becomes so miserable he says something unacceptable to his boss? While I would like to think that people are able to behave for an extended period of time, Bob is disagreeable without talking to Alice or another human being, so let's say that this is 2 weeks. So after 2 weeks, he just loses his collective feces and punches someone and then gets arrested. So Bob has a very bad time after 2 weeks. Fine. Health to interesting. How long or interesting stuff? How long until that line is affected? Well, can get quite smelly when you're sweating, and people might not really appreciate it if the musk is simply too strong. So let's put that at, it's a partial dependency to, oh God, I mean, realistically, you should just be showering. Like, you really should be. Let's say he gets some sort of skin condition or something that's very unpleasant if he doesn't go for a week. So let's go 1 week here. It's been 1 week. Okay, anyway, so there's a week there. Fine, dependency map. Let's walk through this. So if Bob loses his job, everything just kind of starts failing. So that'll happen, this fails in 2 months, that fails in 2 months, that fails in a day. If something is criticality 1, the criticality 1 thing I think was health or something. It's a direct line, so it would start failing basically immediately. So either way, that's less important. Let's look at health getting knocked out. So health knocks out interesting in 1 week. Health knocks out money in 1 month. Interesting doesn't feed into anything. So if interesting stuff is really important, then this would matter. If interesting stuff was criticality 5, you basically just wouldn't even care. But money's important. So anyways, you can see how this cascades through. If you've watched the other video, you can see how complicated this gets. But you can look at basically, you lose this, how long until it knocks out this, and how long until that knocks out that. So health being lost, knocking out charisma, is health after 1 month knocks out the job, and then after losing the job and then the savings or whatever, you're looking at 2 months until charisma is knocked out. That's the basic idea. You could conceivably also put this at a shorter amount. So you could say that the RTO of the money is the savings, and then after 2 months of not practicing charisma because of, or speaking because of lack of money, that's when that gets knocked out. So when we add in the RTOs, this could be a larger number, whatever. You have these ideas here. So Bob would have to figure out, if I don't have this, after this much time, I lose this because this reason. So if I'm worried about my job, if I don't have a shower for a month, I better make sure I have a shower once a month. Wow. If I, don't have my health or whatever, I can't participate in this thing. I become boring. I become a loser, etc. If I don't have this, I better make sure I shower at least once a week now, etc., etc., etc. Bob goes through this whole process. This one isn't as involved as some of the others because there's only 4 things in the dependency map for this. Usually these get a bit more complicated when there's more stuff involved. When you see how we combine all these, then the stuff's going to get really fun. I think Bob should shower. I mean, I guess he doesn't really have to that often, which is kind of wild, but showering's nice.